Hello? Okay. To build in a common understanding and definition of personalized learning and all the terms that kind of come along with that, including competency-based learning. So as part of that, this summer the state has begun offering e-learning Delaware courses to help folks get a deeper understanding of personalized learning. I know folks here on the line have been involved in developing those as well. And then I think a couple other things that have been going on in the state, the Rodell Teacher Council, which I've had the privilege of working with over the past few months, has studied personalized learning and will be releasing a policy blueprint this fall. And competency-based learning is definitely featured in their report. And then some of you have also been involved in the Vision Coalition's Ed 25 work groups and stakeholder engagement that has happened over the course of this year, kind of building on Vision 2015. And so as we think about the next decade of education in Delaware, personalized learning is likely going to be featured pretty prominently in that plan as well. So I know that there are, sorry, Teresa, are you back on?
Rachel, I am back on. I'm so sorry. I gave a whole spiel and no one got to hear it, except for Susan Haverstrup. She's sitting with me.
That's okay.
She's doing
go ahead.
So go ahead and finish the objectives, and I'll catch it on the tail end. I'll wrap it up.
Well, I was just on slide 3.
Okay.
So I was just wrapping up talking about the Vision Coalition. Is there anything else you'd add to kind of current initiatives that are going on in Delaware?
Could you already talk about the standards-based reporting cohort?
But go ahead and add whatever you'd like.
No, pretty much we have the e-learning courses that have now launched. We have the Introductory course that launched this summer, and we'll have the spin-offs from that are the essentials of personalized learning that will kick off this fall. And that's really just to help so that folks can get onto those courses and learn more about what is it that's part of personalized learning, that there's many levels to it. And then we have the standards-based reporting cohort that is working with Dr. Gusky. We had 3 LEAs that worked with Dr. Gusky last year on standards-based grading, and we'll be piloting standards-based report cards in the future. And we have 7 more LEAs that are doing the same thing this year. So there's clearly an interest in competency-based learning and personalized learning at different levels. So this core group, will move forward and continue to explore those options and what it is that we need to do in order to move forward. I think we can go ahead and turn it over to Achieve at this point. They're going to talk to us about some different components of competency-based learning that will help us start building towards defining that for Delaware. And they're going to be sharing some great models with us. And then we'll wrap it up by talking about next steps towards the end.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa. And I just want to say my thanks to all of you for joining and to Teresa and the department for welcoming us to be a part of this conversation with you. We are always excited to work with Delaware, and in particular, this project is just really exciting, and we've been really thrilled to be involved and to see the vision that Delaware has already mapped out, and that all of you will be contributing to in a very substantial way over the next longer. So before I begin, I just wanted to spend just a few moments and discuss a little bit about Achieve, just in case you aren't familiar with us, and a little bit about our work with states on competency. Achieve is a nonprofit, a nonpartisan organization in Washington, D.C., and we really focus on working with states to help them in promoting the college and career-ready agenda across standards, across assessments, across accountability systems, as well as graduation requirements. And Delaware is a state that has just made tremendous progress over the years in really emphasizing college and career readiness throughout its policy and practice, and so it's always fantastic to have that policy foundation in place. From the very beginning of our organization, because we have always focused on really promoting standards-based education and really focusing on the outcomes that students reach, their achievements, their educational attainment, rather than the inputs, as it were, that plug in along the way. Competency-based education has been something that we've always been very interested in, moving from a system based on time to a system based on really helping students get to where they need to go to be on track to college and career readiness has been a really solid fit for us. And in the last years, we've spent a lot of our time starting to really work with states and with districts and schools and other partners to understand the current landscape and to start supporting states in building to recommendations for action. So today, we are working with 12 states across the nation, most of the states in New England, some states in the Midwest, and a few in the West as well. All of these states have committed, like Delaware, to pursuing policies and implementation that promote competency-based pathways that are really geared toward making sure that as students are going through this system, that we have a system in place that allows them to really be held to high expectations that keep them on the path to being prepared for college careers and life. And in particular, part of our theory of action is that states need to very much think about and take action on assessment, on accountability, and on graduation requirements, and that those need to work together so that as teachers are making decisions about whether students have reached a level of competency, that those determinations can really equate to college and career readiness. And so that's a little bit about our work. Before we really dived into working individually with states, we spent a good year with a working group. We had 11 states as well as 12 national and state organizations that were all very much committed to advancing competency. And we worked with them to really understand what it meant and really discuss the implications for state decision-making, for assessment, for graduation requirements, and accountability. Through that work, we came up with a definition of competency-based pathways that I have here on this slide. We started with a working definition that was developed by Susan Patrick and Chris Sturgis, and that was in a publication called Cracking the Code. And I have a link to it at the bottom of this slide. This report was really central to us in really understanding the landscape and something that I would recommend for any of you to read to really understand the more recent origins of this movement across states. So there are a couple of key things that really distinguish competency-based learning from the more traditional time-based learning. And so I'm going to go over it at a high level now, and then what I'll do is I'll just dig into some pieces of it that we think are really critical in terms of helping states meet their college and career readiness and helping districts and schools and teachers and students as well. So the first one is that students advance upon demonstrated mastery. So instead of students advancing in age-based cohorts all at the same time, students go through the content throughout the year, and then, at the end of a big sequence of content, once they can demonstrate that they've reached a higher level of learning. So all of these words are important, but mastery is one that we feel is really important, that it's really about all along the way making sure that students have really mastered the content so they aren't going through the system with gaps in their knowledge. Another really important word is demonstrated. So they're actually taking action to show that they can do things with their learning. The next one is that competencies are really clear. They're measurable. In some of the states that we work with, they break them down into something called learning objectives. Others have things that are called competencies. You can also just use straight up from the standards as well, but they need to be explicit and measurable. The third thing is that as students are assessed through the system, that it's not a one-off, that it's a part of an ongoing process, and that students are actually learning while they're being assessed at the same time. That's something we all really shoot for, and a big distinguishing factor for competency-based learning. The other thing that really relates to the first bullet is that students are assessed at their point of readiness. So students aren't assessed all at the same time, but when a teacher feels that they're likely to score at a mastery level, that's when student assessment is triggered. So again, it's very different from the way the system has worked before. And the next bullet is really important because there is so much more precise information about students' mastery or journey towards mastery at a much more granular level. And because there is such an urgency to make sure that they reach a higher level of learning before they move on, there is a real need for a very strong support system in place to make sure that as students struggle with a set of standards, that they receive support that's very timely and very targeted to what their needs are. And then the fifth bullet really gets back to that mastery point as well, that the competencies are really geared toward making sure that students can apply their knowledge and stretch it further and really create knowledge in the process. And then very much related, the last bullet, in many cases, the way that students are going about reaching these learning outcomes gives them a lot of flexibility. And so they're developing the skills and dispositions, problem solving, teamwork, that are important all along the way. So I'm going to dig into some of these a little bit more deeply. As we've worked with states on competency-based learning, we've really emphasized what Teresa mentioned, which is that we want each state or each district to really define what competency-based learning means to them and to really make the case for why it's important to them. That said, we're starting to pick up some themes from working with a lot of states and districts. And so wanted to kind of give you, not a starting point as such, but just let you know what some of the things are in common that we've been hearing. So one of the pieces, the first of three big pieces I'll focus on, gets back both to the mastery point that I made earlier, but there's also a really big point in that throughout this system, students are really expected to master all of the critical knowledge and skills. So as they go through the system, there isn't a chance that they're going to have early gaps in their learning that really perpetuate over time and that are the source of so many of the achievement gaps that we've been struggling with for so long. Important that it's all of the knowledge, and it really assumes that the full breadth of the standards are critical for all students. So just a big piece of the equity rationale for competency-based learning. Another big piece of it, and those of you who may be involved in the standards-based grading work, this will look very familiar to you as well. The system within a competency-based learning environment is just so transparent. It's very clear what students need to know, very clear what it takes for them to earn a score of competent or proficient or mastery. And so it's just harder for students to fall through the cracks. It's just clear. You can't hide things. You can't average things out that cover up that students may have missed really essential content throughout the year. And we'll dig into a lot more about what this transparency process looks like. but here is a picture, and it's a little bit blurry, but it's from a kindergarten class in Maine, and it's just, to me, a really great example of what a really transparent system looks like. So in Maine, as well as a number of districts and schools across the nation, they use a model where students have scores based on the level of work according to a Marzano taxonomy, where the goal is for all students to get to a 3, and then students then have the choice if they want to go even deeper in the learning and get to a 4. And so when we have taken visits in Maine, we can talk to teachers and they talk about what kind of evidence students need to have in order to get to a 2, what kind of evidence students need to show to get to a 3 or to a 4. And that goes all the way down to kindergarten. So here's an example where a teacher is really showing what student work looks like at these different levels of learning. And we found that as we talked to students, they knew what the difference was. They could say, I'm working to get a 3, so I'm doing a project that requires me to analyze. And then the third big pillar that we think is really important in terms of what we're hearing in terms of the case for moving to a system like this is that you're really empowering students. They're owning their learning, they're owning their data, they know what standards they've gotten a 3 on, which standards they've gotten a 2 on, and they need to do more work. They also have more flexibility. So as they say, I'm going to be working on a 3, I'm getting a 3 in a particular group of standards, there's often a lot of flexibility about how they go about doing it. They can do a project. Those who prefer to take a test, they just want to take a test. Students can write a paper. They can do a movie. They can give a demonstration. Students who do a 4 might develop their own experiment or help another student. There's flexibility. In Maine, they call it voice and choice in their learning. And so that really helps to enhance student engagement along the way and really prepare students for making good decisions, even after they've gone from high school. And here I'm showing you a picture from RSU2, which is a school district in Maine. I think this is Halldale High School, and they require all students to take a capstone before they graduate. And so I thought this was a great example. You have all the students' names, the capstone that they're working on, and then once they've completed it, there's a rubber stamp that they use to say capped. So they actually completed it and passed, and so that's just a really nice example, I thought. So that's the kind of broad definition, a broad case for competency-based learning. And you'll find as you really dig into this work, and many of you have already started along that journey, that there are a lot of different directions you can go, that there's a lot of attributes for this kind of approach, and they don't all have to be emphasized equally. So I would just want to tell a little bit of a case story of how things have played out in Maine, and then they've also, in New Hampshire, they have been working on competency for quite a long time, and it's played out a little bit differently. This can just give you some food for thought as you're thinking about what this would really look like in Delaware. So in Maine, as well as school districts in Colorado, several school districts in California and in Alaska, they use an approach that was really originated from a group called the Reinventing Schools Coalition, which is now a part of the Marzano Research Laboratory. But when you walk into a school that uses this approach, you can tell pretty quickly. They are really focused on advancement until students can really demonstrate their proficiency by getting to a 3 on the standards. In some cases, students are still in age-based cohorts, if that makes sense for the school context. But there are a number of schools that no longer have traditional grades at all, and students work on the standards that they're at. And they can be in very different standards, even if their grades would have already, been the same thing. Another thing that really sets this approach apart is that they've really built in some structure and kind of expectation about the pace that students should be on in order to be on track for high school graduation. They've all found that the phrase anywhere, anytime, and any pace the any pace part doesn't always work with real students, and it's important for them to have a marker. And so that kind of teacher pace that they use really helps students understand where they need to be. And if students aren't on teacher pace, it really helps to trigger the support that they need. As I mentioned earlier, they also have common taxonomies of learning across many of the districts. So they use a taxonomy adapted from Marzano, and everyone understands the taxonomy, and they can talk about it in a common language. And as students work in the classroom is graded, as they receive scores on summative assessments, it's all aligned. And then the third thing that's in common is they really have students own their data. They use something called a capacity matrix, and I can send Teresa an example of one if you're interested in seeing it, where students are actually writing down what do I need to do to get to a 2 in these standards, what do I need to do to get to a 3, and then marking when they've done that. And there's also technology that they use to help keep track of that as well. So I'm going to attempt to show a couple of videos that are both from Maine. One is kind of the teacher's perspective and one is the student's perspective. So if all goes well, this will happen for us in just a second. And meanwhile, are there any burning questions that have emerged? Can you all see this video?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to get it started, and here's from the student's perspective.
Today was workshop day, which means that students have voice and choice. They were allowed to work on any measurement topics they needed help on. A lot of people are working on different things. You can work on writing, math, reading. Sometimes one of the teachers will give you a struggling with that, and you can take them over to somewhere and go through the process and teach them and it's a lot of argument. It's easier because you're talking to a kid and they're using words that you actually understand. Voice and choice for all of us is such a powerful thing. If we aren't feeling like we're in a box and we're told exactly what we need to do or expect other way, they're able to feel like they're individuals, which they are, and they know that we're here for them and that it's our job to, change the way we teach in order to fix the way they learn. I feel like I go home at the end of the day and I feel like I did the best I could for every child. Whereas before, when I was teaching a traditional model, I'd go home and I'd think, oh man, I didn't hit this, and this, and I know that kid was struggling in the back of the room and I couldn't help him today. I don't feel that anymore. I feel like, every second of our classroom day is spent helping kids at their level with what they need. This is who I am now. This is the way that I teach.
Great, thank you all. Were you able to hear that video?
I could hear it was a little light, so.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'm going to do because of that is I'll send the link particularly the second one here from the teacher's perspective is really about how they go about creating the system where students are working on different pieces of the standards. I'll send that link to Teresa to get out to you so you can just watch it on your own time.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Corey.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's the main system, and here's a picture from a science classroom. And again, it's blurry, but you can see across different units the way the teacher is organized, what kind of evidence that students need to reach in order to get to different scores, if you will. So to contrast it just a little bit, again, competency-based learning has many common characteristics, but there are different ways you can really emphasize different parts of it. In New Hampshire, which has been working on this for quite a while, they also have a very strong competency-based system, but their emphasis is a little bit different. They're really focused on deeper learning of the content and related skills. So they're really much more focused on the application and creation of knowledge. Not that Maine isn't, but that's just kind of the first thing that they would really talk to you about. And as a result, they are very focused on creating performance-based assessments and really building in student authentic demonstrations of learning along the way. And then the third piece that's just a real emphasis in New Hampshire is that they've really advanced a system where students can get credit for extended learning opportunities outside the school walls, and they have a really robust system for that along. So again, that's New Hampshire. Every district or school you go to will take different paths. Every state will take a different path to get to where they want to go. And this is just a really exciting time in Delaware that you can take a look at where you are, where do you want to get to, and what path makes the most sense to you. So from there, I just want to propose a couple of questions that you might really start to think about, and then I'll turn it back to Teresa to talk about what interests you and where you'll go next. I would also love to hear your questions and comments about what competency-based learning is looking like across the nation as well. So one of the things that we really encourage states to do, and that a group like this would do, is to really help clarify what competency-based learning would do to help you meet your goals. Delaware is one of the states that's really been crystal clear about what their goals are for students, and how is competency related to ultimately meeting those goals. And also, how does it relate to other work that you have going on in your state or in your district? It's very important that as competency-based learning is approached and as it's implemented, that it's a part of the overall system and it's not just a siloed project that happens. And again, to really clarify what this could look like in Delaware, if you talk to a parent, how would you describe this as being different than the current learning environment? It's also good to start thinking about, as you roll this out, what are kind of operational ways that districts and schools work now that might need to be changed, or what implications can you realize so you can start to think about how you would address those. And then, again, such great work in terms of keeping stakeholders and partners together, but at every junction, who do you need to have at the table to help you do this thinking and help you in really implementing the work. And then the last point, and this is something I know that your group will dig into, that what policies are actually there at the state right now that might be barriers to implementing competency at the local level. Where might districts need flexibility? So those are some of the things that have come up in our work in other areas and that we can anticipate as being important for your group. So with that, I'll stop talking. I don't really like talking very much, and so I would love to open this up for any questions or comments that you all have.
I guess I'll start. I'm Matt Burrows. I'm the superintendent of Appomattox School District. We've started this process. We actually started working with Gusky last year with a group of our with leadership groups of teachers, administrators, and such. And we're taking the process slowly because there's a lot of hurdles that come into play. One of them being the teachers union, because it's a change of thought as far as that goes. Another one being parents, because as we've run into with how we teach math differently, they weren't graded this way. So I think communicating and just explaining why we're doing with parents is also a vital, important part of this as we move forward. We're taking small steps this year to move towards this direction, but we think it's the right thing to do.
I'm sorry, this is Judy Caulfield. I jumped onto the call a little late, but some questions I have were around competency-based report cards for high school and about policies at the state level around Carnegie units for awarding credit.
Yep, so those are really critical and very related as well. And so at the high school, I'll start the conversation, but I can go pretty in-depth, and what I'll do is I'll send some further resources that can help illuminate this. So in terms of the report cards for students at the high school level, I will say that that is nationally a conversation really that's in its toddlerhood, perhaps. Only in the last couple of years have we started to see places where the high school is fully implemented a competency-based model. And so I showed a picture earlier from the capstones in RSU2 Holdout High School in Maine, and that's one of the ones that have just seen a graduating class of students who've gone through the system fully. And what they've realized is that, and every school is different, but they, of course, have their own very unique way of reporting that is, not unlike what you would see from Gusky. Those of you who are working with standards-based report cards, it's much more fine-grained, and, instead of the traditional grade, students are only receiving scores for 3s or higher. And so what they've done is they've oftentimes had a report card that is in that format, and then they have to have an internal conversation about what they want to do in terms of where they want to have a crosswalk that might turn it into a more traditional format. Getting back to the parent point, some of the high schools feel like that kind of comforts parents along the way and is an important kind of interim step to provide them that kind of crosswalk to a traditional model. Others have just deeply invested time in working with higher ed institutions to help them understand what they look like and to get them on board as well. So I just want to acknowledge that that's a really important conversation, and from what we can tell of how it's playing out, one where at the local level there's a lot of kind of decision-making about how fast they want to go and how much they want to take it incrementally to keep parents and others along the way with them as well. In terms of state policy on Carnegie units, what we found across the nation is that most of the states have pretty flexible state policy structures that really allow a lot of opportunities to award credit for students without having seat time requirements behind them. But that's not always the case, and my understanding is that's not the case in Delaware. And so I know one of the big topics we'll have at hand, and I'll have Teresa speak to this, is what kind of flexibility might be possible in Delaware to open up some flexibility for the Carnegie receipt time requirements. Did that answer your question at all?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble muting and unmuting. I just wanted to bring it up that these are things we have to consider. And our policy for granting status credit does have a bunch of flexibility at the bottom, but it still has that Carnegie unit 135 hours in there at the top. So, I don't know, it's almost a little bit contradictive.
Yes, this will be a big topic for you all, for sure. Okay, great. Any other questions or comments before I turn it over to Teresa? Okay, thanks. Well, Teresa, I would love if you would lead a discussion with the group and discuss next steps.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to clarify the reason for us bringing everyone together today. At the Department of Education, we've certainly seen a lot of interest in personalized learning, and we know that there's already some work underway. And we also know that there's barriers that everyone's facing for very different reasons, as Matt Burrows mentioned. So one of our reasons for doing this is to bring like minds together, those that we know have already started in the work or interested in starting in the work, and fostering partnerships that will help support you in this work, like our partnership with Rodell that has already started doing a lot of work around personalized learning, and partnering with the chief who has, is working with states all over across the United States. As Corey mentioned in the beginning, Delaware is one of 13 states that they're working with. We have a lot that we can learn from them because everyone's in very different places. So we wanted to bring like minds together, foster partnerships to help support you in the work, and find out what it is that we need to do in order to clear the path, as Judy mentioned. So we're looking to this group to be an advisory group, and then we also have a core group that will meet, that will we'll do some reading, we'll do some visioning exercises. Achieve is willing to help us make some connections with some schools that are in the work and in different levels of the work that we can go and take a look at. Rodell is helping us with making connections with experts that can help facilitate our meetings for us so that we can be in learner mode. And in the end, we're hoping that we have a definition that Delaware can live with. Just like Corey was mentioning that, Maine is working on one aspect of competency-based learning, or they're kind of attacking it in one way. New Hampshire is doing it a different way. So this group will pretty much be in learner mode for most of the time, and then be able to articulate and define what it is that competency-based learning looks like and means to us here in Delaware. And then also to be able to identify and define the barriers that may keep folks from moving forward. And then at the Department of Ed, we'll be able to then know specifically what we need to do to help clear that path. Because it's one thing, we've met with, Rachel and I actually went to some meetings that Achieve had in Washington, D.C. in May. We had an opportunity to talk to all of the other states. And some states went ahead and cleared the path and changed policies 10 years ago, but the LEAs did not necessarily do anything with that policy change because, for a number of reasons, they weren't prepared. You're not really sure what it looks like. You're not really sure what some next steps look like. You're not really sure how to get over those barriers. So there's no reason really for us to rush into changing policy until we know exactly what it is that you need and how we can support that. So I hope that helps to answer your question, Judy. Definitely on the radar, but we want to make sure that we are either creating policy or revising policy that's going to make sense to our LEAs and helping them move forward. So at this point, Rachel and I will be in touch with this group to let them know when our first meeting will be if you intend to move forward with us. But I know I am really excited in the opportunity to work with experts in this field and to be able to see these models and to be able to work with this group in particular. And as Matt Burrows said, this is not something that's going to happen quickly. We need to know that we need to take our time, but I think it'll really help us as a state to be able to not only define competency-based learning, but also identify some paths forward, knowing that it's not an all or nothing type of situation, that there's certain foundational pieces that we might need to name and say this is going to be non-negotiable in order for you to be successful in this endeavor, and then give some maybe multiple pathways moving forward so that LEAs can then customize it to what they need. So I'll go ahead and open up to any questions that you have at this point.
I don't have any questions. I'm excited about moving forward and seeing what lies ahead.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
And this is Mike Lee. I'll just echo Matt and say very excited about the opportunity to, make informed changes down the road.
So the whole point of having a guiding coalition is to have a powerful set of allies, which is what we consider all of you that we've invited to be part of this work. And that you will then be the sounding board because you're going to get deep into this to help others that want to drive this implementation effort. So I know we're really excited about it. We're excited to learn right along with you and know in the end what it is that we can do to support you and help everyone move forward. So Rachel and Corey, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. I just wanted to see, there's some names that I'm able to see who's on the call, and then I'm just going to call out a few other names just to see maybe who's on the call, but I'm not able to identify them. Is Jose Avilas on the call? Okay, for those of you that don't know Jose, he's the Director of Admissions at University of Delaware, and we were really excited that he was able to accompany us to a team meetings in May when we had the higher ed there from multiple states, and I have to say that he was very charged up when we left. He was very excited to see some of the competency-based transcripts and is really excited for his staff to learn more about this. So we're hoping that he's able to join our advisory group. Is there a representative from PTA on the call? Is Donna Johnson on the call? Kim Joyce from Deltec. And I'm just calling out names that I can't clearly see on the participant list. Do we have Pat? I can't pronounce his last name. Michelle from Developmental Disabilities Council. And I know that Lori Rowe is going to definitely be joining us. She wasn't able to join us today. And Stan Spohr from Howard High School Technology is also going to be joining us. He was unable to join us today. And Susan Havishra was with me up until a few minutes ago as well from the department. So we did have a few people that responded that they definitely want to move forward with us. They just weren't able to join us today. So look for communication from us on when we're going to have our first meeting. And we're very excited that everyone was on the call today.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa, just want to say thanks for putting this together and coordinating it.
You're certainly welcome. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.